All right, welcome back to Osber's Suspiciously Serious show, and today we're going to take a deep dive into someone very different from our last subject, Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, Putin's a very, very interesting, figure, I guess you could say.
Enigmatic almost, right?
Definitely, yeah. After looking into Donald Trump's very public life, Putin is a really stark contrast.
Yeah.
He's obviously an incredibly powerful man, but he operates with a level of secrecy that you just don't often see.
Yeah. We're going to try to make sense of some of that today. Peel back the layers.
Yeah, and just a caveat for the listeners, I'm going to do my best with the Russian pronunciation.
You please.
It's not my forte.
We'll give you grace.
So bear with me.
So let's start with his past. He was born in 1952 in Leningrad, which is now St. Petersburg.
Right.
It sounds like his early years were really shaped by the realities of post-World War II in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, his family was working class. His dad served in the Soviet Navy during the war and was actually wounded.
Wow.
And his mom, she survived the siege of Leningrad, which was just brutal.
You can't even imagine.
No, absolutely horrific. So they lived in a communal apartment. The Soviet Union was still really recovering from the devastation of the war.
Right.
So you can imagine that upbringing instilled in him a kind of toughness and a very different perspective than many other world leaders might have.
Yeah. Seems like those tough circumstances really forged a resilient character in him.
Absolutely.
And then there's the story that he was inspired to join the KGB around age 16 after watching a spy movie.
It emphasized how much impact just one agent could have.
So it was all very glamorous in the movie.
I think it really captured his imagination. This idea of serving his country in a powerful, clandestine way.
Right, very secretive, very important.
Exactly. And I mean, that's kind of interesting because the reality of KGB work was obviously much more complicated and ethically challenging. We'll get into that. But that seed was planted early.
And he took it seriously. He actually studied law to join the KGB.
Oh, yeah. He went to Leningrad State University. It really speaks to how the Soviet system worked, you know? Yeah. Even in the intelligence services, there was a real emphasis on following protocol.
Right. Very bureaucratic.
Definitely.
So he gets his law degree. It's 1975, and he's in the KGB. What was that like?
Oh, this wasn't a James Bond movie, right? He started at the bottom.
Shocking.
And the training was intense, seriously rigorous. He was learning all about counterespionage, infiltration tactics, psychological manipulation.
Wow.
They taught him how to analyze people's weaknesses and exploit them without anyone being the wiser.
So it was all about being stealthy.
Yeah. This was the height of the Cold War. Reagan was president in the U.S. and taking a very firm stance against the Soviet Union.
Yeah, a very different world.
Really high stakes. The KGB was gathering intelligence, trying to counter Western influence.
They were busy. Oh, yeah.
And then in 1985, he's deployed to East Germany. Must have been an important posting.
It was. East Germany was a crucial strategic location for the Soviet Union at that time. His official role was as a translator.
I feel like that's never the real role. It rarely is it? He was really involved in all sorts of covert activities. Monitoring citizens, recruiting informants in West Germany, spying on NATO diplomats. Basically anything that hinted at Western influence had to be tracked.
So they were obsessed with Western influence.
Oh, yeah.
Living in fear of it.
And remember, this was a society under pretty much constant surveillance. The KGB worked very closely with the Stasi, the East German secret police. Everyone felt like they were being watched all the time.
It's like that George Orwell book, 1984.
Yeah, very much so.
And then, boom, the Berlin Wall comes down in 1989.
What a moment, right? I mean, a pivotal moment in history.
Yeah.
And for KGB officers like Putin, who were stationed in East Germany, it was a complete upheaval. Their world was changing overnight.
It must have been a crazy time.
He was.
Yeah.
Apparently, as people started surrounding the KGB building in Dresden where Putin was, he started frantically calling Moscow for instructions.
Yeah.
But he got no response.
Wow.
He realized then that the Soviet Union was crumbling and there was nothing he could do.
The world was changing.
It was. And so he started burning KGB documents. It was like a symbolic act, the end of an era.
Almost like a funeral pyre.
Powerful imagery.
It is. So after the KGB, what does he do?
Well, he ends up back in Leningrad. He starts monitoring academics and students at Leningrad State University looking for, you guessed it, Western influence.
Wow, like he couldn't escape it.
It really seemed to become a defining feature of his worldview.
Right.
He sees resisting Western influence as this crucial battle, often tying it to the preservation of traditional Orthodox Christian values.
It becomes his mission.
It really does.
And then fast forward to 2000, March 2000, he's elected president for the first time.
Right.
But of course, the fairness and transparency of Russian elections have been, let's just say, questioned.
To put it mildly.
Yeah, and people point out that there's often a big gap between what Putin says and what he actually does.
Definitely. It's led to many accusations of hypocrisy. Some experts even argue that his leadership style is all about projecting strength and control, that the appearance of power matters just as much as the reality of it.
It's all about image.
To a large extent, yeah. Now, it is true that under Putin, Russia did experience some economic growth fueled by their energy resources.
Right.
But it was also during this time that those very serious allegations of human rights abuses started to surface.
Right.
And then, of course, in March 2023, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for him for alleged war crimes.
Yeah, and we can't forget about that proposed 30-day truce in Ukraine. It's all very complicated and disturbing.
It is. And then there's the whole issue of his critics, or rather, the lack thereof.
Yeah, what happens to people who speak out against him?
Well, there are a lot of cases that suggest a pretty clear pattern of silencing dissent under his rule.
It's frightening.
Yeah. There's a case of Svetlana Babayeva. She was a journalist critical of the Kremlin and died in a shooting in 2022.
Oh, wow.
And then there's Alexander Litvinenko, former KGB agent, defected, was very outspoken against Putin. He was poisoned with polonium-210 in London back in 2006.
That was a huge story.
It was. And the European Court of Human Rights actually ruled that Russia was responsible for his death.
And it was such a brazen way to do it, using a radioactive substance in a public place.
Yeah, it sent a very chilling message. Nobody is safe.
Not even in another country.
Exactly. And then there's Boris Nemtsov. He was a former deputy prime minister.
Wow.
He was a vocal critic of Putin and of the war in Ukraine, and he was assassinated in 2015 near the Kremlin.
So close to the seat of power.
Yeah, very bold. And guess what? The surveillance cameras in the area were coincidentally deactivated.
What a coincidence.
Right. The whole thing was incredibly suspicious.
And of course, we have to talk about Alexei Navalny.
The most prominent opposition leader.
Yeah, a real thorn in Putin's side.
Yeah.
He was poisoned with Novichok in 2020.
They reportedly put it on his underwear.
Unbelievable.
It's crazy, right?
Wow.
He survived that, but then he was arrested upon returning to Russia in 2021 and tragically died in prison just this year.
Yeah, very suspicious circumstances.
To say the least. He had been investigating Putin's alleged wealth, including that infamous Black Sea mansion that's supposedly worth $1.4 billion.
But he was a real threat.
Oh, yeah. Navalny's case really captured international attention. The poisoning, the arrest, the death in prison. It all raised huge concerns about how far the Russian government would go to silence dissent.
And when we look at human rights and social issues, the situation for LGBTQ plus individuals in Russia is incredibly concerning.
It is. Under Putin, there's been this really alarming crackdown on LGBTQ plus rights, all framed as protecting traditional values from this so-called Western influence.
Right.
They've got this law, the gay propaganda law, that criminalizes sharing information about non-traditional sexual relations to minors. It's been used to censor media, block websites, and even shut down pride events.
So they're basically trying to erase any LGBTQ plus visibility.
Yeah, it's very much about controlling the narrative. LGBTQ plus organizations have also been labeled as foreign agents, and same-sex marriage and adoption are completely banned.
It's like going back in time.
It is. And in 2022, they expanded that gay propaganda law to basically cover any LGBTQ plus content in media, books, music, online, everything. It's this sweeping attempt to silence any discussion about LGBTQ plus issues.
And it's not just the laws. We're hearing reports of violence, torture, imprisonment, even honor killings targeting LGBTQ plus people.
It's a truly horrific situation. Putin himself has been very outspoken on this. He talks about protecting family values and rejecting what he sees as the destructive influence of the West. He said many times that he believes marriage is only between a man and a woman.
So this is not going to change anytime soon.
It doesn't seem likely.
Now let's talk about money, specifically Putin's money. There are all these rumors about his immense wealth.
There are. Some even say he could be the richest person in the world, with a fortune exceeding $200 billion.
$200 billion? How is that even possible?
Well, the speculation focuses on a few things. His potential control over Russia's major energy companies. For one, there's also all the alleged corruption involving the oligarchs, who basically owe their fortunes to their loyalty to him. And then there are the rumors about his ties to organized crime.
Wow.
And it's hard to ignore the huge disconnect between Putin's official income and his rumored lifestyle. There's no way his declared salary could support the kind of wealth he's suspected of having.
Right, something doesn't add up.
It seems pretty clear that he uses a network of proxies, people who hold his assets for him, to keep everything under wraps.
Like those secret Swiss bank accounts we hear about.
Exactly. And remember the Pandora Papers back in 2021?
Oh, yeah.
They revealed all these shell companies and secret transactions involving people in Putin's inner circle. They were moving around huge amounts of money, buying luxury properties in places like Monaco.
So they were hiding their wealth offshore.
Yeah, very common tactic. And while Putin's name wasn't directly on many of those documents, the connections were very clear.
Right, it was all very suspicious. And speaking of secrecy, his family life is another area where he's incredibly private.
Oh yeah, he keeps that very tightly controlled. Even his divorce from Ludmila in 2013 was kind of shrouded in mystery.
She was barely seen in public anyway.
Right. And after the divorce, she basically disappeared. There were all these rumors about what happened to her.
Did she remarry? Is she living a life of luxury?
Nobody really knows for sure.
Yep.
Some say she got a big payout to keep quiet.
Wow.
Who knows? And then there are his daughters, Maria and Katerina. They live incredibly private lives.
They basically don't exist publicly.
It's true. They use their maternal grandmother's last name to avoid media attention.
That's interesting.
Right. Maria is supposedly a medical researcher, and Katerina is involved in artificial intelligence. But there are hardly any photos of them. They never appear with their father in public. It's like he's intentionally keeping them hidden.
It's all very strange. And then there's the speculation about a secret third daughter and his rumored relationship with Alina Kabaeva, the Olympic gymnast.
Yeah, those rumors have been around for a long time. People say they have multiple children together, but it's never been confirmed. And Kabaeva has also disappeared from public view at times, which only fuels the speculation.
It's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
And it all adds to this aura of mystery that surrounds Putin. It's all very deliberate.
Speaking of appearances, for a man in his 70s, he looks remarkably good.
He does. It's led to all sorts of theories about him using rejuvenation treatments, like cell therapies or blood plasma transfusions, maybe even stem cell treatments. Some people think he might be obsessed with longevity.
The quest for eternal youth?
Well, who wouldn't want to live forever?
True. And he cultivates this image of being very physically fit. All the judo, the sambo, the fishing, the skiing.
Right. It all plays into this carefully constructed persona. But even with that, there are always rumors about his health, whispers about Parkinson's, cancer, secret trips to the hospital.
Yeah, and his behavior in public is sometimes a little odd. It's led some people to believe he uses body doubles.
It sounds crazy, right? But some people point to slight variations in his appearance in photos and videos as evidence. And remember when he disappeared for 10 days back in 2015?
Oh yeah, everybody was wondering what was going on.
The theories were wild. Was he sick? Was there an accident? Was he at the birth of a secret child?
And his response was just, life would be boring without secrets.
It just added to the mystery.
So here we are. We've got this incredibly powerful leader, Vladimir Putin, who operates behind a veil of secrecy. He keeps his private life hidden, and even parts of his professional life are obscured.
Exactly. It's a very calculated approach.
Yeah.
And all this secrecy makes it extremely difficult to get a handle on who he really is, what his true motivations are. The image he presents to the world is so carefully crafted that it's hard to know what's real and what's just a facade.
Yeah, the whole thing is fascinating and a little bit scary.
Definitely. It makes you wonder, what are the global consequences of having this much power concentrated in the hands of someone who's so secretive? Are we, the rest of the world, really aware of all the forces at play here?
It's a question worth thinking about. And that's our show for today.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And remember, keep an open mind, stay curious, and don't believe everything you hear.
Especially on the internet.
Especially on the internet.
But seriously, folks, keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
We'll see you next time.
Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay skeptical. You never know what wonders await in the weird and wonderful world of Osber's suspiciously serious show.